And myself were both managers at the Video Adventure video store chain in Evanston. And Jay and I had been friends prior to that through an interest in like B-movies and just films in general. He had the initial idea to start the festival as something he came up with at a famous Monsters of Filmland horror convention, actually. He had been living with Scott Vigil and Raoul Vigil from the Prop Theater. And Raoul had been making Super 8 films. And we were also friends with people like Jim Sikora and people who were making films in Chicago. And Jay had the idea that, you know, to structure the initial festival was structured a lot like these kind of conventions, much more than it is today. So we had an opportunity for filmmakers to show their work, but also to sell videotapes and things. And a lot of our initial influence was through fanzines at the time, specifically Film Threat and the Film Threat Video Guide. We got them to give us a free ad for our first call for entries. And we had no money when we started the festival. I mean, Jay was, you know, sleeping on the mattress and floor of Scott's apartment. And the phone was the number you called. Like, he'd wake up in the middle of the night and answer the phone and write down somebody's address to send them an entry form and things. But we got, I think our first year, we probably got about 300 submissions from around the country. We went to the Bismarck Hotel, which is now the Allegra Hotel downtown, and got them to give us some space in exchange for when filmmakers got the acceptance notification, we encouraged them to attend the festival and said the festival was being held at this hotel and that they could get discounted rooms there, and if we reached a certain number of rooms, then we wouldn't have to pay for the rooms that we were showing the films in, and that worked. The first year, we showed just 16mm and video, and this is pre-digital video. This was 3/4-inch U-matic tape. Our big guest that year, well, we did a tribute to Tom Palazzolo, Chicago filmmaker. We also, and we gave him our first Lifetime Achievement Award. We also brought Richard Kern here from New York. And that whole cinema of transgression scene in New York in the late 80s was still like a big influence on us too. And, in the early years of the festival, it was a lot of transgression, a lot of shock value, and, you know, John Waters' influence. We had John Waters as a guest our fourth year, and that was a pretty big deal. I think the big break that helped the festival become much bigger fairly quickly was our third year. We did the first 2 years, like I said, in these hotels. The second year we moved over to the Congress Hotel. It was the same basic idea. We had Guy Madden and Kenneth Anger as guests that year. Our third year, we brought George Kuchar to Chicago and did a program with him. But our big break that really helped the festival grow really quickly is that we got in touch with Roger Ebert and asked him to write something about the festival, and he said sure. Asked us to send him some of the work in the festival. And, you know, we were pretty young, ambitious guys, and when he said send us some work, we called every filmmaker in the festival and said, Roger Ebert wants to see your movie, and send it to, here's his address. So he got inundated with tapes, and wrote a pretty lengthy piece where he wrote about most of the films in the festival, and he wrote a pretty positive overview, and that really helped get us a lot of attention very quickly. We had some good quotes from him. And he's been pretty supportive throughout the years. It's been a big plus of being based in Chicago. And it's become much more like a film festival and less like a fan convention than it was in the early days. The work that we show has changed a little too, in that people don't really make as much transgressive type work these days, and when they do, it feels a little more forced and not as, like, I don't respond to it as well as I used to. I find it's harder to make that kind of work successfully. And I had always been interested in more thoughtful experimental work and things. There's even, it's a kind of funny anecdote, in the initial first year program book, Jay's opening letter, he kind of makes some derogatory comments about some filmmakers that I personally really love, like Andrei Tarkovsky, Peter Greenaway, people like. And I had him go back and add, like, you look at it, he says these things, kind of dismissing these, like, people that I think Jay thought were too arty, or whatever. And I had him put a parenthetical statement saying, actually, Bryan really likes them.